Your great-grandmother could feed a family of 8 with 3 potatoes, a handful of flour, and whatever she could forage from the backyard. These weren't gourmet meals. They were survival recipes born from necessity, creativity, and sheer determination. During the Great Depression and wartime rationing, Sunday supper wasn't about abundance. It was about making something out of nothing and bringing the family together around whatever grace could be found on the table. Chili mac. When a pot of chili didn't quite feed everyone, smart cooks would stretch it by serving it over macaroni noodles. This combination provided both protein and carbohydrates while making the chili go much further. The pasta absorbed the flavors from the chili, creating a hearty, satisfying meal that filled hungry bellies. Some families would mix the chili and macaroni together before serving, while others ladled the chili over individual portions of noodles. A sprinkle of cheese on top was a luxury when available, but the dish was delicious even without it. This meal could be made with leftover chili from earlier in the week, giving families 2 different meals from one pot of ingredients. The combination became so popular that it transcended its Depression-era origins, becoming a comfort food favorite in many households. Hoover stew. Back when Herbert Hoover was president and the Great Depression hit hard, families named this humble dish after him, though not as a compliment. This one-pot wonder combined whatever vegetables were on hand with a small amount of meat, usually the cheapest cuts or scraps from the butcher. The base was simple: onions, potatoes, and canned tomatoes stretched with water to make a hearty broth. Sometimes a lucky family might add carrots, celery, or turnips from their victory garden. The meat was often just bones with a little meat clinging to them, but after hours of slow simmering, those bones gave up every bit of flavor they had. What made this dish special wasn't the ingredients, it was the way it could feed a family of 6 with ingredients that cost less than 50 cents. Served with day-old bread for dipping, Hoover stew became a symbol of making do with what you had and finding satisfaction in simplicity. Pork and beans with hot dogs. When money was tight but the family needed protein, this combination became a weekly staple. A single can of pork and beans could be stretched to feed 4 people when you sliced 1 or 2 hot dogs into it. The hot dogs were often the cheapest variety from the grocery store, but they added essential protein and made the meal feel more substantial. Smart cooks would brown the sliced hot dogs in the pan first to develop flavor before adding the beans. Sometimes they'd add a spoonful of molasses or brown sugar to sweeten the beans, or a dash of mustard powder for tang. Served over white rice or with a slice of buttered bread, this meal could fill hungry bellies for under $1. The combination became so popular that it transcended its Depression-era origins, appearing on family tables well into the 1970s. Children loved the sweet beans and salty hot dogs, never knowing this was actually a poverty meal disguised as comfort food. Spam and eggs. When Spam was introduced in 1937, it quickly became a staple in households across America, especially during the war years when fresh meat was scarce. A single can could provide several meals when used sparingly. For Sunday breakfast or dinner, thick slices of Spam were fried until crispy and served alongside scrambled eggs. The salty, processed meat paired perfectly with fluffy eggs, creating a protein-rich meal that felt more substantial than its simple ingredients suggested. Some families would dice the Spam and mix it directly into the scrambled eggs, stretching both ingredients further. Hash browns or fried potatoes often accompanied this dish, along with toast made from day-old bread. Children grew up thinking this was a normal, even special meal. The distinctive taste of Spam became associated with Sunday mornings and family gatherings. The meal could be prepared quickly, making it perfect for busy families or when unexpected guests arrived. Years later, many would remember this combination with fondness, even after they could afford much fancier fare. Wacky cake. During World War II, when eggs, butter, and milk were rationed or too expensive for most families, resourceful bakers created this depression cake that required none of these precious ingredients. The recipe called for just flour, sugar, cocoa powder, baking soda, salt, water, vegetable oil, and vinegar. The vinegar reacted with the baking soda to create the rise that eggs would normally provide, while the oil replaced butter. Mixed right in the pan, it would bake in. This cake eliminated the need for extra bowls, saving on cleanup when soap was also precious. The result was surprisingly moist and chocolatey, proving that luxury ingredients weren't always necessary for a satisfying dessert. Families would make this cake for Sunday dinner, birthdays, and special occasions throughout the war years. Children had no idea they were eating a substitute cake. To them, it was just delicious. The recipe spread from neighbor to neighbor, becoming a treasured family secret that many still use today. Egg salad sandwiches. Hard-boiled eggs were an economical source of protein that could be transformed into a satisfying meal when mixed with mayonnaise and seasonings. The eggs were chopped and mixed with just enough mayonnaise to bind them together, then seasoned with salt, pepper, and sometimes a touch of mustard. Served on soft bread with lettuce if available, these sandwiches were filling and nutritious. Some families would add chopped celery or onions for crunch and flavor. The beauty of egg salad was that it could be made ahead and actually improved in flavor as it sat. These sandwiches were perfect for picnics or light suppers, providing good protein at a fraction of the cost of meat. Pickled beet eggs. When fresh protein was expensive, pickled eggs provided an affordable source of nutrition that could be prepared in advance and stored for weeks. Pickled beet eggs combined hard-boiled eggs with pickled beet juice, creating a colorful and flavorful protein source that could serve as either a side dish or main course, depending on the family's needs. The beet juice provided both color and flavor, while the pickling process helped preserve the eggs for extended periods. Sunday suppers gained color and nutrition when pickled beet eggs appeared on the table. The eggs provided essential protein, while the pickled flavor added interest to meals that might otherwise lack variety. The dish represented foresight and planning, showing how families could prepare ahead to ensure they would have nutritious options available even when fresh ingredients were scarce or expensive. Salmon patties. A single can of salmon could become dinner for a family when mixed with breadcrumbs, an egg, and some chopped onion. These patties were fried until golden and crispy on the outside while staying tender inside. The key was removing every tiny bone from the canned salmon, a tedious but necessary task that children often helped with. Some families added mashed potatoes to stretch the salmon even further, while others mixed in cornmeal for extra texture and bulk. The patties were served with whatever vegetables were in season or available from the family garden. In the South, they might be accompanied by collard greens and cornbread. In the North, boiled potatoes and green beans were common sides. The beauty of salmon patties was their versatility. They could be breakfast, lunch, or dinner, depending on what else was available. Many families ate them cold the next day as sandwiches, making one can of salmon provide multiple meals throughout the week. Fried bologna. When steak was just a dream, thick sliced bologna became the poor man's steak. Cut into quarter-inch slices and fried until the edges curled up and caramelized, bologna transformed from a simple lunch meat into something that resembled a real dinner. The trick was scoring the edges in a crosshatch pattern to prevent excessive curling and ensure even cooking. Served with fried potatoes and onions, this meal felt hearty and satisfying despite its humble origins. Some families would make gravy from the drippings left in the pan, using flour and milk to create a cream sauce that tied the whole meal together. Children loved the crispy, salty edges of the fried bologna, often fighting over who got the pieces with the most curl. This dish appeared on Sunday tables across America, especially in working-class neighborhoods where every penny counted. The total cost for feeding a family rarely exceeded $2, making it a reliable go-to meal when the budget was stretched thin. Bean and ham hock soup. A single ham hock could flavor an enormous pot of beans, feeding a large family for multiple meals. The bone was simmered for hours until the meat fell off, and the marrow enriched the cooking liquid. Navy beans, pintos, or whatever dried beans were cheapest would cook slowly with the ham hock, absorbing all that smoky, salty flavor. Onions, carrots, and celery were added, if available, but the dish was satisfying even without vegetables. The key was patience. The longer it cooked, the better it tasted. Served over cornbread or with a slice of buttered bread, this soup was filling and nutritious. Leftovers could be stretched with water or broth to make the pot last even longer. Some families would mash half the beans to thicken the soup naturally, creating a heartier texture. This dish represented the art of making something delicious from the cheapest ingredients available, proving that flavor didn't have to be expensive. Meatball soup. A small amount of ground beef could feed a large family when formed into tiny meatballs and added to a pot of vegetable soup. The meatballs were mostly breadcrumbs and seasonings with just enough meat to hold them together and provide flavor. They were dropped into simmering broth along with whatever vegetables were available: carrots, celery, onions, potatoes. The meatballs cooked quickly in the hot broth, releasing their flavor throughout the soup. This dish was filling and satisfying, providing protein and vegetables in every spoonful. The broth was usually made from bones or scraps, creating a rich base for the soup. Children loved hunting for the meatballs in their bowls, while adults appreciated how filling the soup was. This meal could simmer all day, filling the house with wonderful aromas. The leftovers were even better the next day, as the flavors had time to meld together. This soup taught families that a little meat could go a long way when used wisely. Corn fritters. When fresh corn was in season and cheap, families would make these sweet, crispy fritters that could serve as either a side dish or dessert. Corn kernels were mixed into a simple batter made with flour, eggs, and milk, then dropped by spoonfuls into hot oil. The result was golden, puffy fritters with bursts of sweet corn in every bite. Sometimes a touch of sugar was added to make them more dessert-like, or herbs and spices for a savory version. These fritters were often served alongside beans and cornbread for a complete meal, or with molasses for dessert. The oil used for frying was precious and carefully saved for reuse, making this an occasional treat rather than an everyday dish. Children loved helping to drop the batter into the hot oil and watching the fritters puff up and turn golden brown. The combination of crispy exterior and tender corn-studded interior made these fritters a favorite at family gatherings. Beans and cornbread. This classic combination provided complete protein when eaten together, making it a nutritious and economical meal. A pot of beans, usually pintos, navy beans, or black-eyed peas, was simmered with onions and whatever seasonings were available. Served with thick slices of cornbread for sopping up the bean liquid, this meal was both filling and satisfying. The beans provided protein and fiber, while the cornbread contributed carbohydrates and a touch of sweetness. Some families would add a small piece of salt pork or ham bone to the beans for extra flavor. This meal was especially popular in the South, where it became a tradition that continues today. The combination was so nutritious that it could sustain hard-working families through long days of physical labor. Pancakes for dinner. When breakfast foods were cheaper than dinner ingredients, many families flipped the script and served pancakes for Sunday supper. A large stack of fluffy pancakes could fill hungry bellies for very little money, especially when topped with homemade syrup made from brown sugar and water. Some families would add bits of bacon or sausage to the batter if they had any, creating a more dinner-like feel. The key was making the pancakes hearty and substantial, rather than the thin, delicate versions served in restaurants. Thick, fluffy pancakes that absorbed plenty of syrup became a filling meal that children especially loved. Sometimes fruit would be added to the batter: apples, blueberries, or bananas that were getting too ripe. The ritual of making pancakes together as a family turned this simple meal into something special, with everyone helping to flip and stack the golden discs. Tomato sandwiches. When tomatoes were ripe and abundant in summer gardens, they became the star of simple but delicious sandwiches. Thick slices of ripe tomatoes were layered on soft white bread with mayonnaise, salt, and pepper, creating a sandwich that celebrated the pure flavor of fresh tomatoes. Some families would add lettuce if it was available, but the tomato was always the main attraction. The key was using tomatoes at their peak ripeness, when they were sweet and juicy. These sandwiches were often served with chips or pickles as a light supper on hot summer evenings. The simplicity was the beauty. When tomatoes were this good, they didn't need anything fancy to make them shine. Hash. Sunday morning hash was a masterpiece of using up leftovers and creating something new. Any leftover meat from the week, Pot roast, ham, even lunch meat, was diced and fried with potatoes and onions until everything was golden and crispy. The key was patience, letting the potatoes develop a golden crust before stirring. Some families added leftover vegetables to the mix, creating a colorful and nutritious meal from what might otherwise be thrown away. Topped with fried or poached eggs, hash became a hearty breakfast or dinner that used every scrap of food in the house. The crispy, caramelized edges of the potatoes were the prize, and children would fight over who got the crispiest portions. This dish taught families that yesterday's dinner could become today's feast with a little creativity and some time at the stove. Pigs in a blanket. Hot dogs wrapped in biscuit dough and baked until golden brown created a fun, filling meal that children especially loved. The biscuit dough could be made from scratch or from a mix, depending on what was available and affordable. Each hot dog was wrapped snugly in dough, leaving just the ends exposed, then baked until the bread was golden and the hot dog was heated through. Served with beans or a simple salad, this meal felt special and festive despite its simple ingredients. Some families would add a slice of cheese inside the dough for extra richness when it was available. The combination of salty hot dog and tender, slightly sweet biscuit dough was irresistible to children and adults alike. This dish could be prepared ahead and baked when needed, making it perfect for busy Sunday evenings. Chicken and dumplings. When a whole chicken was on sale or a family raised their own chickens, this dish could provide multiple meals from a single bird. The chicken was simmered until tender, creating a rich broth that became the base for fluffy dumplings. The meat was removed from the bones and returned to the pot, ensuring every bit was used. Dumplings made from simple flour, baking powder, and milk were dropped into the simmering broth and cooked until light and fluffy. The result was a comforting, stick-to-your-ribs meal that warmed both body and soul. Vegetables like carrots, celery, and onions were often added to make the dish more nutritious and filling. This meal required time and patience, making it perfect for lazy Sunday afternoons when the family was together. Cornbread and buttermilk. In the South, this simple combination was often served as a light supper, especially during hot summer months. Crumbled cornbread was placed in a tall glass and covered with cold buttermilk, creating a refreshing and filling meal. Some families would add a drizzle of molasses or honey for sweetness, while others preferred it plain. The cornbread would soften slightly in the buttermilk while still maintaining some texture, creating an interesting contrast in every spoonful. This meal was especially popular with children who loved the sweet-tangy flavor combination. It was also incredibly economical. A pan of cornbread and a quart of buttermilk could feed several people for very little money. The calcium from the buttermilk and the corn provided good nutrition, even though it seemed like such a simple dish. Rice and gravy. When meat was scarce, gravy made from flour, milk, and drippings could transform plain rice into a satisfying meal. The gravy was typically made from bacon drippings or sausage grease, thickened with flour and extended with milk to create a rich, creamy sauce. Served over rice, this combination was filling and comforting even without chunks of meat. Some families would add bits of leftover meat to the gravy when available, but it was delicious even without it. The key was seasoning the gravy well with salt, pepper, and sometimes sage or other herbs. This dish was especially popular in the South, where rice was a staple grain. Served with vegetables from the garden or whatever was available, rice and gravy provided a complete meal that satisfied both hunger and budget. Potato pancakes. When potatoes were abundant and cheap, they could be transformed into crispy golden pancakes that served as either a side dish or main course. Grated potatoes were mixed with eggs, flour, and seasonings, then fried until crispy and golden brown. The result was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, with a satisfying potato flavor in every bite. Served with applesauce or sour cream when available, these pancakes were a filling and economical meal. Some families would add grated onions to the mixture for extra flavor. The key was squeezing out excess moisture from the grated potatoes to ensure the pancakes would crisp properly. These could be served for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, making them a versatile addition to the family menu. Biscuits and gravy. Fluffy homemade biscuits smothered in creamy sausage gravy became a beloved comfort food that could serve as breakfast, lunch, or dinner. The gravy was made from sausage drippings, flour, and milk, creating a rich, peppery sauce that clung to every bite of biscuit. Even a small amount of sausage could flavor enough gravy to feed a large family when served over fresh biscuits. The biscuits were made from simple ingredients: flour, baking powder, lard or butter, and milk, but when made with care, they were light and fluffy. This meal was especially popular in the South, where it became a weekend tradition in many families. The combination of carbohydrates and protein provided sustained energy for hardworking families. Salmon croquettes. Similar to salmon patties but formed into small, elegant shapes and fried until golden, these croquettes could make a can of salmon feel like a fancy dinner. Mixed with mashed potatoes, eggs, and seasonings, the salmon mixture was formed into small cylinders or ovals, then coated in breadcrumbs and fried until crispy. The result was crispy on the outside and creamy on the inside, with flakes of salmon throughout. Served with a simple sauce made from mayonnaise and pickle relish, these croquettes felt special enough for Sunday dinner. The key was removing all the bones from the canned salmon and seasoning the mixture well. These could be made ahead and fried just before serving, making them perfect for entertaining on a budget. Stuffed bell peppers. When bell peppers were abundant and cheap, they became edible bowls for stretching small amounts of ground meat. The filling typically consisted of rice, a small amount of ground beef, onions, and whatever vegetables were available. The peppers were hollowed out, stuffed with the mixture, and baked until tender. Often there was more rice than meat in the filling, but the combination was satisfying and nutritious. Some families would top the peppers with a small amount of cheese if it was available, creating a golden, bubbly top. The rice absorbed all the flavors from the meat and vegetables, while the pepper became sweet and tender during baking. Leftover rice from earlier meals could be used, making this dish a clever way to use up food that might otherwise go to waste. Served with bread or a simple salad, stuffed peppers provided a complete meal that felt substantial, despite the modest amount of meat. Sloppy joes. A small amount of ground beef could feed a large family when stretched with plenty of onions, tomato sauce, and seasonings. The meat was browned with diced onions, then simmered with ketchup, mustard, and whatever spices were available to create a saucy mixture. Served on hamburger buns or slices of bread, this messy, flavorful sandwich became a family favorite. The key was using more sauce than meat, so each sandwich was satisfying despite the small amount of protein. Some families added diced bell peppers or celery to bulk up the mixture further. The beauty of sloppy joes was that they could be made ahead and reheated, actually improving in flavor as the ingredients melded together. Children loved the sweet, tangy sauce and didn't mind that the sandwiches were messy to eat. Served with pickles and potato chips when available, this meal felt special despite its economical ingredients. Foraged mushroom stew. Nature provided when grocery stores were unaffordable. Grandparents who knew which wild mushrooms were safe gathered them from woods and fields, creating free meals high in flavor, if not calories. The mushrooms simmered with whatever vegetables were available, perhaps onions, potatoes, or carrots from the garden. The earthy broth satisfied hunger with ingredients that cost nothing but the knowledge needed to harvest safely and the time spent gathering. This wisdom about wild foods passed down through generations became increasingly rare as families moved to urban areas and lost connection with traditional foraging grounds. The mushroom identification knowledge represented family intellectual property more valuable than physical possessions, sometimes recorded in handwritten notebooks with detailed drawings. Gathering became a family activity, combining recreation with practical food procurement, teaching children patience and observation skills while connecting them to ancestral practices that stretched back centuries. Bean sandwiches. Protein came cheap in the form of beans. Leftover beans from dinner mashed with a fork, spread on bread, and seasoned with whatever was available, maybe a dash of vinegar, salt and pepper, or hot sauce for those who grew peppers. The sandwich provided protein and energy for workers heading to factories or fields. Variations included adding a small amount of onion, or rarely, a slice of cheese when dairy wasn't too expensive. The beans were often soaked overnight and cooked in large batches on weekends, providing a foundation for multiple meals throughout the week. Lunch pails carried to work sites would contain these hearty sandwiches wrapped in newspaper or wax paper, saved from previous purchases. The filling nature of beans meant workers could make it through long shifts of physical labor without hunger distracting from their tasks, a practical consideration that outweighed concerns about taste or variety. Deviled eggs. The perfect deviled egg balances tangy and creamy flavors in a bite-sized package. Dating back to ancient Rome, these party favorites reached peak popularity during the 1950s, when no American gathering was complete without a deviled egg platter. The classic recipe combines egg yolks with mayonnaise, mustard, and paprika, though many family recipes include secret ingredients passed down through generations. When church socials and community gatherings were central to American life, the deviled egg tray was often the first to empty. Today, chefs across the country are reinventing this classic with additions like bacon, smoked salmon, or avocado, but the traditional version continues to evoke childhood memories of Sunday dinners and summer picnics. Bread soup. Stale bread never went to waste. Day-old or even week-old bread formed the foundation of this filling soup. Chunks of hard bread soaked in hot water or thin broth until soft, then seasoned with whatever was on hand, maybe garlic, salt, pepper, or dried herbs from the garden. A drizzle of olive oil for Italian families or lard for others added necessary calories. The soup filled stomachs on nights when the pantry was nearly bare, teaching children that even the simplest ingredients could become a meal with enough creativity. Immigrant families often brought this tradition from their homelands, with each culture having its own variation. Papa al pomodoro in Italian households or sopa de ajo in Spanish homes. The transformation of hard, seemingly inedible bread into something warm and comforting represented the resilience of those who refused to be defeated by poverty. Women would trade secret ingredients between neighbors, creating community bonds through shared survival techniques that crossed cultural boundaries. Crab-stuffed mushrooms. When Americans began exploring more sophisticated flavor combinations in the 1960s and 70s, crab-stuffed mushrooms emerged as a cocktail party favorite. These savory bites combine the earthy flavor of mushrooms with sweet crab meat, breadcrumbs, and herbs, creating a perfect two-bite appetizer that feels both indulgent and refined. During the golden age of dinner parties, hosts would serve these hot from the oven, impressing guests with their culinary prowess. The aromatics of butter, garlic, and herbs filled homes across America, creating childhood memories for a generation who watched adults enjoying these sophisticated treats, while children were often offered simpler fare. Cabbage and noodles. Cabbage stored well through winter months, making it valuable when fresh produce wasn't available. Chopped cabbage sautéed until soft, then mixed with cooked egg noodles and seasoned with salt, pepper, and perhaps caraway seeds. The dish, sometimes called haluski in Eastern European households, filled bellies with minimal expense. The slightly sweet flavor of cooked cabbage paired with the satisfying chew of noodles created comfort in difficult times. The lingering smell of cabbage cooking became associated with tenement buildings and working-class neighborhoods, a sensory marker of economic status that some found embarrassing, but others embraced with pride. Homemade noodles often replaced store-bought when flour was available, but money was not. The afternoon spent rolling and cutting dough, becoming productive family time. The humble dish connected generations of immigrants to their homelands while adapting to American ingredients and circumstances, becoming a cultural bridge during difficult transitions. Bean bundles. Green bean bundles wrapped in bacon and brushed with a brown sugar glaze represent Americana ingenuity at its finest. By elevating the humble green bean through careful arrangement and rich accompaniments, home cooks transformed everyday vegetables into special occasion food during the golden age of holiday entertaining. The contrast between the crisp, tender beans and the salty, sweet bacon creates an irresistible flavor combination. Often prepared for Thanksgiving or Christmas gatherings, these bundles create childhood memories of helping in the kitchen, wrapping bacon around beans secured with toothpicks, a task often assigned to young helpers eager to contribute to holiday preparations. Ketchup sandwiches. When cupboards were nearly bare, bread and ketchup became lunch. 2 slices of bread spread with ketchup, sometimes a sprinkle of sugar added if available, made a sandwich that quieted hunger pangs. Children didn't realize their parents often went without, so they could have this simple meal. The tangy sweetness of ketchup made the plain bread more exciting for young eaters, who didn't understand the financial struggles behind such a basic offering. Restaurants would sometimes provide free ketchup packets, which parents would collect and save for these emergency meals at home. The sandwich became so normalized that many children requested it even when other options were available, never realizing it was born from desperation. Years later, adults who grew up during these lean times would sometimes make ketchup sandwiches when feeling nostalgic, the simple flavor bringing back powerful memories of childhood resilience. Sausage balls. The humble combination of sausage, Bisquick, and shredded cheese forms the foundation of this beloved Southern appetizer. During holiday gatherings across the American South, these savory bites have marked celebrations for generations, embodying simple Americana cuisine at its most comforting. The genius of sausage balls lies in their accessibility, requiring just 3 main ingredients while delivering complex flavors and satisfying texture. The peppery kick of breakfast sausage combines with the sharp cheese and buttery biscuit mix to create golden nuggets that evoke childhood memories of Christmas mornings and family reunions for those raised in regions where this appetizer reigns supreme. Cornmeal mush. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner, cornmeal mush served all purposes. Cornmeal cooked slowly in water until thick, then eaten warm with milk if available, or with butter and syrup for special mornings. Leftover mush cooled until firm, then sliced and fried in bacon grease or lard for later meals. The versatility of a single inexpensive ingredient stretched food budgets through difficult times. The familiar corn flavor became associated with home and sustenance for generations. The rhythmic stirring required to prevent lumps became meditative for many cooks, who would stand at stoves for up to 30 minutes, ensuring the perfect consistency. Regional variations developed across America, sweeter in the South, often savory in northern states, showing how even the simplest foods develop cultural significance. The distinctive scraping sound of slicing cold mush for frying would signal to sleeping family members that breakfast preparation had begun, creating a sense of security in knowing food would be available that day. Perfection salad. Few dishes embody early 20th century American culinary innovation like perfection salad. This molded creation of chopped vegetables suspended in tangy lemon gelatin earned its creator, Mrs. John E. Cook, 3rd prize in a 1904 cooking contest sponsored by Knox Gelatin, launching generations of gelatin-based starters. During the golden age of home economics, this salad represented scientific cooking at its finest, preserving vegetables' nutritional value while transforming them into an elegant form. The crisp cabbage, celery, and bell peppers provided textural contrast to the smooth gelatin, while vinegar and lemon juice added brightness. Served on lettuce leaves and topped with mayonnaise, perfection salad appeared at ladies' luncheons and dinner parties as a symbol of modernity and precision. The name itself reflected the Americana pursuit of domestic perfection that dominated women's magazines of the era. Those who grew up in mid-century America hold childhood memories of these molded salads appearing for company meals, their presence signaling special occasions. While contemporary diners might view savory gelatin with skepticism, perfection salad deserves recognition as an innovative approach to serving vegetables that shaped American dining for decades. Bread and butter, pickles and biscuits. Sometimes dinner consisted of home-canned vegetables and bread. Bread and butter pickles, named because they were often served between slices of bread and butter during hard times. paired with homemade biscuits, made a meal when meat was unaffordable. The tangy sweet pickles made from cucumbers grown in backyard gardens preserved summer's bounty for winter meals. The vinegar provided flavor, while the bread delivered necessary carbohydrates for energy. The annual pickle-making process involved entire families, with children washing cucumbers while adults sliced and packed jars in steamy summer kitchens. The distinctive pop of sealing jars became a sound associated with security, each successful seal representing future meals safely stored. The recipe for bread and butter pickles was often a point of pride, with secret ingredients or techniques passed down through generations as valuable family heirlooms worth more than material possessions. Watergate salad. This fluffy green concoction with the politically inspired name captures America's 1970s fascination with instant foods. Combining pistachio pudding mix, crushed pineapple, whipped topping, marshmallows, and pecans, Watergate salad appeared at potlucks and family gatherings during the golden age of convenience cooking. The distinctive mint green color made it instantly recognizable on buffet tables. Though often served as dessert, its frequent appearance alongside savory appetizers at church suppers and holiday meals earns it a place in America's appetizer heritage as a sweet counterpoint to saltier offerings. The name itself, reportedly inspired by the Watergate scandal, reflects Americana humor finding its way into the kitchen. Though the connection between the political event and the recipe remains unclear, the name stuck and helped propel the dish to national popularity. Ham hocks and beans. A single ham hock flavored a pot of beans that fed a family for days. The inexpensive cut of meat simmered with dried beans, releasing smoky flavor throughout. Often served with cornbread to soak up the rich broth, this meal provided protein and sustaining energy for hard-working families. The beans, soaked overnight and cooked slowly, stretched to multiple meals, changing consistency as they were reheated each day. Many families had special bean pots, often cracked or chipped but treasured for the flavors they imparted after years of use. The ritual of bean preparation followed a strict timeline: Saturday night soaking, Sunday morning rinsing, and all-day simmering while the family attended church and spent time together. The distinctive aroma that filled homes on Bean Day became a community marker, with neighbors sometimes sharing their pots when someone's beans failed to soften or when unexpected guests arrive. Pickle wraps. Also known as Minnesota sushi in the Midwest, pickle wraps combine dill pickles, cream cheese, and thinly sliced dried beef into a spiral of contrasting flavors. This humble appetizer represents the practical creativity that defines Americana cuisine, taking simple ingredients and transforming them into something greater than the sum of their parts. The tangy crunch of the pickle against the creamy cheese and savory meat creates an addictive combination that has sustained its popularity through decades of changing food trends. At potlucks across the country, these sliced pinwheels are often among the first items to disappear from the buffet table. Spam spread pinwheels. During World War II and in the years that followed, Spam became an Americana food icon. The pink canned meat found its way into countless recipes, including these festive pinwheels that graced cocktail parties during the golden age of processed foods. The spread typically combines ground Spam with cream cheese, pickle relish, and seasonings, which is then slathered onto soft white bread, rolled up, and sliced into colorful spirals. For those who grew up in the 1950s and 60s, these pinwheels evoke childhood memories of special occasions when adults would gather with highballs while children snuck extra appetizers from the buffet table.